Okay, so here let's work on the last sketch for initial concept sketch. So out of four, this one I had in my mind, wanted to create something in the water. So this one has got inspiration from one of those offshore oil rig floating in the out in the sea. So you can see the bottom bubble section kind of shape eventually become like crashing wave, like crashing into the support structure. So there's enough height from actual where the buildings are built onto the platform, and there's a supporting structure going into the water. So I'm cropping the vertical proportion in this one, thinking it'll be cool to show more of a sky. Very overcast, it's like nighttime. So choosing this particular blue, just wanted to make this a little more fantasy color rather than kind of cerulean blue. Has a little green to it. This is more like kind of fancy version of blue. Okay, here I'm adding highlights on the waves. So here I'm continuing drawing with chalk brush. So overall midtone value is laid out, so it's time to hit on some highlights and make some of the forms stand out more. So pretty much like drawing is most of this process, even though I'm changing the brush size. So some of the marks becomes more like brush marks, but basic idea behind this is looking at the pen layout that I have and either adding highlights next to some of the forms, or continuing the line and some of the shape separation requires more thick lines, so I'm changing the thickness of lines. So probably like working on the same layer for a while. I'm adding this behind structure, just hinting that there's a lot bigger oil rig is behind it. Maybe this is actually moving platform. It sort of has the thin extruding out the gun shape in the front. Gotta do some cleanup because some of the marker marks are showing through. So here you can see I have this random shapes at the top. Some looks pretty good, some looks just kind of feel awkward. However, before I start doing more editing, it's just making sure some of the details are not too competing with other details. So very simple, like quick separating, getting the different size of waves. So these quick paintings are good for communicating your ideas to the game director. Because the first thing we do is like, getting our head around what are these big locations are, and it seems like this on water, like ocean oil rig kind of thing is becomes a kind of favorite choice for level design for some of the AAA titles. You know, it's dramatic. You know, you get to like kind of adventure out to the ocean, and you get to this out of nowhere kind of thing. So these techniques are pretty quick way of getting your ideas down. You know, put some mood and getting the scale so you can communicate your idea with the director. I'm still using kind of old painting method for this one. I figure a lot of cool digital painting tools are available online. Sometimes we don't even do any line work and go straight to the painting, which is fine, I do that all the time too. This is kind of like going back in time. However, I remember talking about a learning curve, and I probably the most people same thing, but in the beginning of the career, when you start working in the industry, first 3 years, 2 years, I think that's when your skills are really improving, because you're starting from pretty much the bottom, so you're more acceptive, and you're more you get easily inspired by actual working environment, and that's the when you really can manage your time well, and then fully learning all the things in the production. And then this production in the game studio, because there's a good side on working as a contract freelance, and there's another good side working as corporate the artist, which I've been working for Sony for a little more than 10 years. Now it's my everyday schedule is a little different. It's because I have to manage a team. I have less time sitting down and actually doing work. Sometimes it's really frustrating because I need to get better. This ongoing goal to be a better artist. But is it in terms of getting better with the technique, or is it as overall as an artist? I know that like you only can do what you know. So if you really educate yourself, learning about colors and lightings and how things work in the nature, then you could see more in your painting, and you can always try to make it apply all the rules, work in the nature. But if you're sitting in the office, that's what I need to do more. But I'm more like relying on my imagination, and you can see right here, it could look cool, but in a real setting, it's kind of lights are all everywhere, and kind of spotlight on the surface. There's no sense of direction of light. However, it's just my painting style too. I work pretty fast, and it's just getting the idea down. It's more like priority in this process. So here adding more structure at the top. Instead of thinking more like just how do I make this more like cool design and cool shapes, I was working with the art director and the game designer over the years. I often like try to direct my design to more of a level design layout. So for example, like having this tall vertical part would be more like, that could be eventually the character has to get up to the top, and somehow that's where you start doing like the puzzle, the mechanism gets started, and the middle panels are actually the ones that you're actually controlling, that kind of thing. Because a high level stage, you have to kind of think about the design that way. So what is this part? What is that section that I'm drawing has anything to do with the activity of the character and the progression of gameplay. And also, like, while I'm sketching in the one direction and one dimension, but I have to think about on the other side, and what is the view from that side, and how it's gonna stage different gameplay from looking at from the other side. So it's a lot of fun. It's definitely game industry has still fairly young age individual working. Well, everyone's getting old. When I started, it's mostly single, and we started work late and we go home late. Sometimes people start up at 11 and go home like 8, 9, and we took the crunch overtime to be like sort of like, it's natural for us. But now it's just different. It's like over 10 years, everyone start have family and kids. It's important to be home early. So things are changing. The game industry is changing and evolving. But what I'm really curious about is how people's lifestyle will change, and that's pretty much what's gonna dictate the gaming industry. It's what people will prefer over certain type of the presentation. So it's also exciting, if you work on a successful title, then your artwork is actually eventually comes alive and will be in hand with millions of people worldwide. And I was pretty fortunate with working with a successful studio. So here I'm touching up some of the atmosphere, final touch, and yeah, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to demonstrate some of my humble technique. I mean, it's not really fancy, but it's sort of kind of summarize my design approach and how I, without like rendering a lot of things, how I skip through those rendering the time, and how quickly get to the presenting initial ideas. So there's a lot of things that comes to play. I think one of the most important thing is understanding the perspective and understanding the value working in the shot, especially environment concept, and putting the right value to create atmosphere is very important, and you need to have a good eye to do it, and good understanding about lighting, and most importantly how to put together in constructive form using perspective. So, and then of course that's my weakness of sort of pushing it to the final push to get it like completely beautiful rendered image, and which is I haven't demonstrated in this, but I hope everyone's enjoyed this and move on to the next chapter. Thank you.